Ever since I decided to start drawing again, I have been thinking about my art quite a lot. And I think I have slowly started to change my mindset around my artwork and creating art in general. And I want to talk about it in this video because it's been in my mind quite a lot. Ever since I decided to create my YouTube channel, I have been feeling like my art goals are quite unrealistic, maybe even a little bit silly. I've been struggling with trying to figure out what is realistic, or maybe a better term, acceptable. What is the acceptable goal for me, or the acceptable time frame to achieve these goals? Thinking about realistically, what can I actually achieve through my art? I think anyone who has a dream or has ambitions to achieve something in life feel that way at some point. But here's what I think. If you think about artists or aspiring artists in general, bearing in mind these are people who tend to be very protective of their work, who tend to be very emotionally attached to their work, and they tend to take a lot of pride in their work because of the level of hard work and dedication that goes into it. And they also sometimes struggle to share their art to the world as well because it forces them to be vulnerable. These same people dreaming of wanting to be recognized for their art, when it's already such a difficult industry to get into, despite all these internal struggles, it definitely constitutes to being delusional. And the word delusional in itself, this word which seems to have so many negative connotations, it seems to be the root problem in causing all these issues and insecurities around creating art. I've been struggling myself because every time I think about my art and every time I try to draw, there is this thought that's at the back of my mind telling me, well, your art isn't really good enough. You're a bit out of your depth. You are being delusional. These were the first thoughts that came into my mind, but it doesn't have to be negative at all. There is a level of delusion that exists just to say that you want to become successful, whether that is as an artist or anything, really. So nobody should ever feel like they're being too unrealistic for wanting to achieve something out of their life. Because if you're not surrounded by people who are already pushing you down, telling you can't do it, your own brain does a pretty good job at fulfilling that task for you anyway. And you realize that you have created a mental block by constantly telling yourself that, you're not good enough and constantly bringing yourself down. You end up becoming an enemy to yourself. You procrastinate, you become lazy, you are filled with self-doubt, and you get these thoughts about wanting to quit, sometimes even before you have begun. Again, call it whatever you will, be it impostor syndrome or simply just fear of judgment from others. They're very valid and normal feelings to experience. But the point is, there always seem to be these hidden forces that you have to battle through every time you make an active decision to work towards a goal, and it can get quite exhausting at times. And it's important to note that these thoughts don't define you as a person. This is something I had to learn the hard way. Your thoughts essentially are all these different ideas that you have that are influenced by your surrounding environment, the content you choose to consume and plug into your brain. What you do with those thoughts and how you interact with them, and whether you take action upon those thoughts, is what determines whether they turn into reality or they just disappear at the back of your mind. It's just a fleeting thought. You hear from it once and then you never hear from it again. But sometimes those thoughts are feelings of self-doubt and internal insecurity. So what do you do when they're constantly there and you just can't seem to get them out of your mind? I have come to learn that the answer is really simple. It's not a revelation by any means, and it's to just do it anyway. Because one thing that's also very important to consider is, when will those thoughts actually go away? When are you going to start feeling like you are good enough? And will they ever really go away? If you focus on those feelings, you don't end up achieving anything, and you have to start somewhere if you want to see progress, especially if that is to do with your art journey. For me personally, I know these feelings all too well. As someone who hasn't practiced drawing in a long time and hasn't gotten official training in art, as someone who has graduated from something completely different from art, sometimes I feel a little bit out of place. It's this it's this feeling of, what am I doing here? why am I here? And it's strange because I started out on this venture with the intention of just doing something purely for fun. I just wanted to get back into art because it's something I genuinely enjoy, not because I want to necessarily make money out of it, although, it would be pretty cool to be able to do that, but that was not the primary goal. My intention was mainly to just work on myself, and starting a YouTube channel was just really a way of forcing myself to get out of my head and just start making art. It's a way of holding myself accountable. This art journey means more to me than just learning how to draw. It's a journey of learning to be more disciplined, learning to be more independent, learning to trust myself, and learning how to solve problems on my own when I get stuck. It's more so an experiment to test my abilities and figuring out what I'm actually capable of. And that's why I think this is much more important to me than I initially realized. It's not so much about art in itself or about the fear of failing to become an artist, but more so to do with, trusting myself and fear of failing to depend on myself. I don't know if that makes any sense. What I feel scared of is deciding to work on something, choosing to start something for myself, and realizing in the process that I'm not capable. And if I really think about it, these feelings of not being good enough, they would persist whether I decide to take on drawing or something completely different altogether. That's why it's nothing to do with art per se, it's more so a mental struggle within myself. And I think just me wanting to start drawing, as someone who struggles to draw, as someone who works full time and is constantly exhausted, it's definitely what you would call being delusional. It is extremely difficult to create YouTube content while also having a full-time job. By the time I come home from work, it's close to 6:30 p.m., sometimes even later. Then after eating, doing a bunch of chores, spending time with family, fulfilling all these extra responsibilities that I have in life, I don't actually get the opportunity to sit down and draw until later in the evening. And on some days, the whole evening gets written off because it's just too busy. And even when I finally get the opportunity to sit down to draw, having the mental capacity to draw after working the whole day or the whole week, even when you are already exhausted and you just want to go to sleep, that in itself is a struggle. And wanting to become successful despite all these challenges, everything about this is delusional. Nothing about this is realistic by any means, but these are not unique challenges. These are struggles that are shared by many people who are also trying to balance art with the full-time job. It's just life. But it may or may not come as a surprise to you that after I made this decision to start drawing again and start a YouTube channel and become, in quotation marks, delusional, I have created more art in this short period of time than I did for the past, I don't even know how many years, despite all of those challenges I just described. And yes, I have less free time than before. I'm a bit more sleep deprived, but then I am usually anyway. I'm just, more exhausted and maybe even more misunderstood at times because I can't always express that tiredness to the people close to me. But I have also found a way to be more productive. So I guess what I'm trying to say is being ambitious with yourself and feeling like you're being delusional in the process, it's completely normal, completely beneficial, and some will even tell you completely necessary to successfully become an artist. I would argue that is necessary, not just for art, but for whatever it is you want to pursue in life. It's good to overestimate your skills and abilities because it allows you to push yourself and it gives you the opportunity to become better. As long as this isn't causing you to reject constructive feedback, it's not causing you to become arrogant to the point where you feel as if you have nothing to learn. You're rejecting advice, you are choosing not to learn new things. That's not what I mean by being delusional. What I mean is, as long as you are maintaining a balance between learning and growing as an artist, but also having faith in your work, the only logical path from there is a step forward to success, whatever that success looks like for you. There is no other way for you to go if you keep being consistent. So I just wanted to say, and this is an advice more so for myself than anyone else, it's to mute whatever background noise you may be having in your brain and to just create art. you know? And if you cannot find a way to mute those voices, do it anyway, because you may be feeling nervous or scared, you may be feeling lonely in your journey, or equally you may be feeling hopeful and excited by the possibilities art can bring you. Do it despite any of those feelings, because those feelings will come and go. And I wanted to say that you're definitely not alone in your struggles, so don't condition yourself into believing that something is out of your reach without even making an attempt to reach for it. This is just the first hurdle, and there is many more to come. Anyway, that's enough motivational talk for today. I made myself cringe enough times making this video, so I hope you enjoyed it. Do look out for future videos, but until then, bye.